I'm about to get kicked out of Selhurst Park, home of Crystal Palace FC and fictional AFC Richmond. And I'm going to interview some of the people playing and see what jobs they have. So here's who I chatted to today.
My name is Mira. I work at MMC Ventures, which is a venture capital fund, and I am an analyst on the investment team.
Is this your first job in that kind of industry? Did you have any jobs before this?
It is my first full-time job. I interned once before joining MMC, and then I actually joined MMC as an intern, and I got a full-time offer to join the investment team.
Cool. So would you say that it's your grades at school, or would you say that it was finding that internship that got you the job after that?
I think it's more about being proactive when you're at university or wherever you are. And actually the way I got to MMC was through like the clubs and societies that I was part in at university. So this club, it was an entrepreneur society, and they had a competition which I won, and I got to go to MMC for one day. So that's how I initially got in contact with MMC, and I stayed really close to the people there. So that's how I got the internship, actually.
Cool. So what did you study at uni? Was it relevant to the job you're doing now?
So my undergrad was in biology, and then which is kind of relevant depending on the industry you work in, but it's not financial at all. And then I did entrepreneurship, which is kind of relevant, but not like extremely relevant. But you learn a lot on the job.
What do you think would be the best route from absolute square one into the industry you're doing now?
The route that I took is not very common, but I think the closest way would be to do as many internships as you can from a really young age. Try to get internships from this industry, like the financial industry, otherwise in startups, something operational where it's like a fast-moving environment where you can learn so much, and then work your way through there. But like being proactive and starting early in your career would really help when like later on you'll really understand why it's important to start early. It might not make so much sense in the beginning, but you'll thank yourself later.
What would you say keeps you motivated in like a high pressure job that you might be in now? Or do you see it as high pressure?
Yeah, it is high pressure. So I play football on the side as well, and that definitely helps me to like kind of zone out of your day-to-day job. So I think finding a hobby that would distract you and can get you back with a fresh mind does really help. So football is for me it's my zone out, and I think it would really help for you to find one as well.
What would you place as the starting salary in your industry?
Financial services is a well-paid industry as a junior role. I think something around 35 to 40 would make sense in financial services, and it's relatively really well compared to other jobs for sure.
Cool, thank you very much. Right, I know you're tight for time. Let's get the warm-up questions. I'll forget otherwise.
My name is Clémence, Clem for short. I am a cultural programmer, so I program cultural events across music, arts, theatre, cabaret, comedy, talks, and I do it at Coco in Camden and the House of Coco, which is a members club attached to it.
Would you say that school played any part in the job that you do now? Or was it something perhaps that you did outside of school that could help people kind of move into the industry you're in?
So I'd say that school in itself and the grades I got, not so much, but what helped is that I made sure to cultivate my curiosity across every subject rather than limit myself to what I liked to do, because my job is very broad and creativity and inspiration comes from anything. So having that tendency to be interested in anything you do is really valuable, because you never know when you're going to meet someone who's going to give you an idea and think that is fun to work and tingle with. And then, I also did, alongside my studies and my first jobs, were always in the field. I volunteered a lot on festivals and that kind of thing, which gave me on-the-ground experience that studies wouldn't have. Obviously applying myself to school was good, but none of what I'm doing now I couldn't have done if I've done a completely different path in school.
What keeps you motivated to do all of that extra to kind of get to where you are, for the value to kind of be realised?
It's funny because I was just thinking this the other day, because I work in events, and it's a kind of industry where you work all the time, weekends and evenings don't exist. It's not a 9 to 5, and the tiredness can get a lot, so you wonder why you're doing it for. But I think ultimately it's two things. It's the people, because it's an industry where people are really addicted to emotional connections and the human connection you get from it, both from the people you work with, because you work 15 hours a day, so you want to have a team that you're still happy to work with, but also the people you meet doing the events for, the audience, and people who come back. And the second thing is the joy, because I have the immense privilege to have a job that means that I get paid to put on events that bring joy to people, and that's a feeling that is really hard to let go of. So that's the first thing. In a larger way, I think it's the fact that I know that every day I'm going to learn and discover something new, an artist that I don't know, a book that I get recommended, some random bits of information in science that is kind of fun, and knowing that there is so much more to discover every day keeps me going.
Do you see that as the value of your industry? Do you feel like the pay is good, or do you feel like it's irrelevant because you're happy to go to work and do something that gets you going every day?
It's a good question. I mean, London is a highly cultural and creative industry place, and a lot of people in the industry are not paid enough to sustain this. So, passion doesn't pay the bills, unfortunately. And so many times you get told that you're paid for experience or exposure. In my case, I'm very lucky that I can sustain my life with it. But also, I know that I couldn't have done a job that only for the money. I need something to sustain me and to motivate me every day. So I think ultimately, while I could have done a job that meant I was paid much, much more, the pleasure I get from it and the quality of my life in terms of development and personal horizons is incommensurable.
Cool. So if you're talking to, say, 17 or an 18-year-old who is looking to get into the kind of job that you're doing now, what would you advise they do as like an action plan? In a very quantitative way, I think try and find as many opportunities as they can to gain experience, meet people, like network, and diverse their knowledge. Because maybe today you're a huge fan of a certain type of music or artist, and it's great, and you can sort of apply to this kind, so that you get a very specific knowledge. But I think learning the most you can everywhere is better, and also you'll make connections. So one of the biggest break I had in my career was because I volunteered at a festival, and I did a good job, and the person called me back and they put me on the programming team. So that's the first thing. And also have fun. You don't get in the cultural industries by mistake. So if you're there, enjoy it. It seems silly, but it's true. So you think there's definitely going to be a bit of unpaid work involved in getting in? Would you say that there's maybe a cut-off point where enough is enough and you should just do things you're offered to be paid for? So
I think you should always know your worth, and it's true that it's an industry where, especially when you're starting, people will try and take advantage of you. I once got an interview where I spent 2 full days handling flyers for free, and it was supposed to be a tryout, which obviously was just a way to get free people to do flyering outside of venue. But you learn. It's 2 days of my life. That's it. I think the cutouts is more personal. Obviously, you need to sustain yourself and things, but ultimately, you'll know when it's enough, and it's not you've not lost, or you're not failed, if you decide that it's done, at that point you can reconsider and try to be more strategic about the kind of job you take or where you go to, or you can decide that you do it for the passion and you stop there and you find something else. I would also say that there is not one path. You can enter by many, many doors. You can start in private events, you can do reception work, hospitality is a good one, tech. There are many ways to the top.
Did you go to university, and do you use that knowledge now if you did?
Yes, I got really lucky that I was in a course that was quite generalist. So again, it was a question of learning to learn and learning to be curious rather than learning a subject. I did politics, which is very large, but then I did urban studies, so it was more urban-centered. The one thing I didn't say, and I think it's really, really important, especially in this industry, is to stay kind and nice, because there are thousands of people who are very talented. If they're not nice, you don't want to work with them. I don't care how talented you are. I want to spend time with you when we're working 16 hours. So stay kind, be kind to everyone. It goes a really long way.
Great, I think that's brilliant advice. Thanks very much.
I'm Ian Wallace. I'm an Associate Director at Fieldhouse Associates in the communications role, and we seek media coverage to help our clients achieve their commercial objectives.
Did anything you learned at uni play into what you're doing now?
Did go to university and I studied communication studies and sociology with a view to getting into journalism. I didn't manage to find my way into journalism that way. I sent off lots of applications, got lots of rebuttals, and decided that I needed to look for something a bit more tailored, so I did a post-grad magazine journalism course, and within that I had some work experience which gave me a start within a publishing company, and I then worked there for a number of years. Latterly I then moved into PR, and the good thing about journalism is there are many transferable skills that also work in industries such as communications, which is what I've ended up in.
Would you value the transferable skills as a big part of going to university?
I would encourage people to go if they get the opportunity, but not everybody has that opportunity, and it's very costly now. I was lucky enough to go at a time when you didn't have tuition fees, so I think not going to uni is absolutely fine. I think the key thing is to kind of try a number of different careers out, like test them, get some work experience, get in touch with people, use your network as much as you can if you have one, but just be persistent and gain a bit of experience that gives you an idea of what you might want to do in future. And then once you have that, I think it is worth focusing and doing more of a technical course if you can, get some training, and that will give you the kind of the requisite skills that you need to kind of really make a career of what you're kind of interested in.
What would you see as your kind of main motivator in selecting what kind of path you took?
I enjoyed writing, and so I really wanted to do a job that enabled me to express myself in a literary way. So I didn't necessarily choose the kind of the career that was going to provide me with great wealth. It was much more about wanting to do something I enjoyed and something I was passionate about. So there was absolutely a sense of purpose about what I did and what I chose to do. And I think the thing is, if you are ambitious as well, aligned with that purpose, then ultimately you can kind of progress in your career, you can make the right impression, you can get the promotions that you deserve at the right time, and then the kind of the salary increases come with that, and you get the best of both worlds if you're lucky enough.
If you were to do it all over again, is there anything that you think would have helped you pick an easier path, or were you pretty happy with how things went?
I feel like I made the right choices in my A-levels from the point of GCSEs. I mean, you don't have much choice of that. Choosing history over geography was perhaps a good decision because within history you're likely to develop some research skills. I think at A-levels it was really key that I had an idea of what I wanted to do, so I chose media studies, history and English, all of which were kind of related in a way to what I then wanted to do at degree level. What I would say is that if I had my time over again, I would probably, even though I'm happy with the way things turned out, I would have probably thought about something that would give me the technical skills at an earlier stage. It was actually the postgrad in magazine journalism that got me the work experience that led to my job and career.
Is there anything you would add perhaps about your industry, an insight that maybe someone studying their A-levels now might kind of help them out to know that you didn't expect going into it?
If you go into the media, you have to understand that it's quite fast-paced, it's deadline-based, and the expectations are that people really get stuck in. So I think if you really want to make a good impression, you have to be willing to make some sacrifices early on. So that might mean going to some events to develop your wider knowledge of the space that you're working in. It might mean just asking for more work and not just sitting back and thinking that because you finished a task, that's enough until you're asked to do another one. Really look to make a good impression and keep that rolling as much as possible. And that will get you the recognition that you need and the experience to give you opportunities later on.
So at the level you are now, how many years experience do you think would kind of get you there?
My career is slightly different because I've transferred into PR and communications at a later stage. So I'd had a almost 20-year career in journalism, publishing and running websites and magazines, and then decided to move into PR because it's often a natural next step, but there are a lot of new skills that you need to acquire. So I came in at I had to take a kind of a step back to take a step forward. And again, just going back to I made a point about sometimes you have to make a bit of a sacrifice. So it was a salary sacrifice. I had to take that step back in order to forge a new career and make a good impression and learn some of the things that I didn't have in my skill set.
I think it's valuable that people know a lot of careers aren't linear. They're not just a straight progression. It is going to be jumping around, especially now compared to 50 years ago.
The world is changing in terms of the technology that we use. I mentioned that I did a postgrad in magazine journalism. The print publishing industry is very different to what it was over 20 years ago. And the way that journalism is carried out has changed enormously. The influence of social media, that obviously didn't exist. There are platforms and tools that we use today that wouldn't have been thought of at the time. So it's you have to adapt to each of those things. I'm not necessarily the most technical, but on some of those things. But you learn enough, and you use the kind of the transferable skills that you've got to provide the most value that you're able to within the company, alongside a very talented team of people that maybe have some of maybe complement some of the areas where you're lacking.
And you're on, so I'll let you go. Thanks very much for sitting down.